everyone. Ashley Mailloux and David Aragona with the daily racing form. Some Kentucky Oaks races are this weekend. And while the weather hasn't been ideal in Hot Springs, it's just going to move forward, I guess, a day. On Sunday now will be the Honeybee. They will also have the Rebel. And looking at the Honeybee in terms of the field this year, it's a big one. 13 have entered for the mile and 16th event for the 3-year-old fillies. And I know there's a 7-5 shot, David, on the inside Muhimma, but I do think there are some really talented fillies that deserve a chance at maybe the top spot.
It's a highly competitive race. It's obviously a large field with 13 signed on, and it does feel like there's a lot of quality in here. There's also a little bit of filler. I think there are some big prices that are maybe a little tough to make in this race, so we'll see if they all end up running, given how strong it came up for a Kentucky Oaks prep. But the key star attraction, obviously, is the number one Muhimma, who so far in her career, at least what she did as a 2-year-old, has looked like one of the top early contenders for the Kentucky Oaks.
And with this field of 13, we'll take a look at the Timeform US pace projections. And a fast pace is expected. The number 9, Look Forward. I guess she was aptly named. She likes to be kind of in the mix early from the get-go, regardless of the distance. 6 furlongs all the way to a mile and a 16th. Muhimma, though, we know she wants to be forward. And, I agree with this. I do think the pace could be contested. There's a couple of horses that are also going to stretch out in distance that they haven't been far off the pace in the past.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what Florent Giroux does with Muhimma from the rail post, because while she has stalked just off a horse in her sprint races, when she went 2 turns last time, she was just on the front end every step of the way, and she might find herself in a slightly unfamiliar situation here if horses cross over in front of her or she has to race in a pocket. That's a little different for her, but she might just have the talent to overcome it, and it does feel like there is speed to her outside, especially the 7 Gunite Max and the horse you mentioned, Look Forward. So I could see this pace heating up.
And if it is a hot pace, look out for the number 5, Quick Kick, who should be closing from off of it. She's 12-1 on the morning line, 3rd last time out in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies. We'll kick it off, though, with the 1, Muhimma, and we'll jump right into a replay. Now, she was able to take graded stakes competition and stakes competition in general for the first time in her most recent outing. Pretty nice win when it's all said and done. She gets an 89 buyer here in the Grade 2 Demoiselle, and she just took command in a big field from the get-go.
Yeah, just watching this replay, I think the thing you have to appreciate about her is she is just a beast of a 2-year-old filly. I mean, she's got a lot of muscle and size to her and just looks more developed than her competition, or at least that was the case last year. Yeah. She got the 9 furlongs of that Demoiselle with a pretty soft trip. She was setting some moderate fractions on the front end and was able to kick away once the closer Ballerina Doro came to her at the end. But I did like the way she maintained her advantage all the way to the wire once Ballerina Doro got to her at the 8th pole. So that says to me that the 2 turns is just fine for this daughter of Munnings, and we'll see how the trip works out. But obviously, from a raw ability standpoint, she's shown more than the rest of this field so far.
You bring up a great point, though, about her physicality. Ballerina Doro does look kind of tiny on the outside, getting up next to her in that stretch run. The 2, Necessity for Norm Cassie, was able to put it together last time out. It was her second start of her 3-year-old campaign, and a different trip. I mean, she's tried to run in each and every start, David, but I feel like 2 starts back, she was really far back, had a lot of work to do, and being a little bit more in touch with the pace setters last time out seemed to work for her.
Yeah, she's a horse that just lost all chance at the start, too, back when she dwelt in the gate a good maybe 8 lengths behind the rest of the field, and actually ran really well to get up for 4th in that spot. And that's why the bettors made her the favorite when she came back for the last race and got the job done with a good trip. She sat in the pocket, came through, and was able to put that field away. Not really sure about the quality of the maiden field that she was beating last time, so this is a big step up in class, but the connections obviously believe in her because they nominated her to the Triple Crown.
The 3, Jenkin, up next for Lindsay Schultz, 2 for 2 in her races at Oaklawn Park. Now, one of them was the maiden score most recently in the year's end, and similar trips in terms of just a couple of lengths off the action early. She seemed to handle an off track last time out, but feel like she'll still need a little bit of a step forward here against these other fillies.
Yeah, I just am not really sure about the quality of that year's end compared to other stakes that others are exiting coming into this race. But she did run well within the context of that spot. She was wide around the far turn, continued to stay on through the wire. It seems like she's a filly who has really improved with the added distance. She's just facing some much tougher rivals here. So she deserves to be a big price. And if you like her, you're going to get paid.
The 4 is up next in this group. An interesting horse, Classic Appeal, who didn't show much on debut, obviously had a ton of trouble, then came back at a race at Turfway Park and took them gate to wire. And in terms of productivity, there have been a couple of next out winners. I guess the best one being Golden Sunshine, who got that 77 buyer against Maiden Special Weight competition in the next outing. Just seems like a peculiar place for Classic Appeal to come into and to show up. Her figure, even though she was able to win, it's not that flashy.
No, it's not. And she was able to get to the front end through some pretty slow fractions when she won that race at a big price at Turfway. And it just doesn't feel like she's quick enough to get anywhere near the lead in here with some of the fast horses that have shown sprint speed to her outside. So I just don't really see the trip coming for her.
The 5 quick kick we saw with the Timeform US pace projection, she has the LP flag attached to her, and she was rolling late in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies to round out the try. Prior to that, a nice second behind Immersive in the Alcibiades at Keeneland. If the pace is hot, she should be able to roll late. It's just kind of looking at her races. Is she going to get enough of a pace in here compared to the times and the splits on her prior 4 starts?
I could see her getting the right pace setup easily, just given what we looked at in the Timeform US pace projector. I just wonder how good she really is, Ashley, because she was picking up pieces behind Immersive in those races, and maybe I'm still holding it against her a little bit because I bet the straight exacta Immersive over her in the Breeders' Cup, and I don't know how she didn't get up for second that day, given how fast the pace was, and she was rolling around the far turn, and she just kind of flattened out at the end of that race to only finish third in there, and she hasn't really progressed from a speed figure standpoint through the second half of her 2-year-old season. So I need to see her take a big step forward in this race.
It's tough to always know how to assess the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Obviously, Immersive is off the Kentucky Oaks path, but she didn't break the sharpest as well, and maybe cost herself a little bit of ground. So curious to see how she'll be bet off that 12-1 morning line. The 6, Take Charge Milady. She did not go off favored last time out, and that was in the Martha Washington. As we take a look at that race, pretty impressive performance. This is a story of a filly that I feel like has really taken big strides forward with each and every single start. And she was able to put away the favorite in this race, Quietside, who she'll have to face again on Sunday.
Yeah, that's the thing. She's just really progressed with every start. You can see her kind of learning her lessons with each racetrack experience. She kind of figured things out too late when she lost to her stablemate, Anonima 3-back, but her last 2 victories have been visually impressive, including this one. I think it's fair to say that she got a better trip than Quietside on this day, but her victory was still decisive, and she made her own good trip by moving into the race around the far turn and drawing off from that field, kind of catching Quietside by surprise when she made that early move past the half-mile pole. She can adapt to coming from off the pace. She's got a big, strong finish on her. Feels like a horse that's just moving in the right direction coming into this Honeybee.
And I'll be curious to see how the runners out of the Martha Washington kind of are able to handle themselves on Sunday, knowing that there was a scratch in there. It was only a field of 5. And I think some horses, maybe her, will have to navigate a little bit more through traffic. The 7, Gunite Max for Travis Murphy, also entered in another spot at Oaklawn Park, was able to win last time out. The big question is going to be distance at this point. That win was at a 6 furlong distance, and obviously was really involved early. And you talked about it and kind of hit the nail on the head. This is a horse that even if you're not backing, you have to think about what she can do from a pace perspective.
Yeah, she could be a real problem for a horse like Look Forward because her only chance is to try to get forward in this race. It's just hard for me to see her getting the distance based on what we've seen from her so far in her sprint races.
The 8, Going Steady at next, another horse that's going to stretch out in distance, but she's tried 2 turns before. We saw that 2 starts back at Churchill against Maiden Special Weight competition. How do you assess her last race? I thought it was actually a better than looks effort. I know it was sprinting, but she seemed like with the pace flow, she was a couple lengths off of it and did make a late run and did draw off nicely.
Yeah, I think Going Steady's last race is definitely the best that she's produced so far. She was wide on the far turn. She moved into the race very handily and then was able to finish it off at the end, something that she's kind of struggled to do early in her career where she would flatten out at the end of her races. The distance, though, is still a major question because that was 6 furlongs. And like you said, in her one prior attempt at it, she just didn't really see out the mile and the 16th.
Dwayne Lucas having a good meet down at Oaklawn Park, 18%, where last year he was just 9% on the year. The number 9, Look Forward. We'll take a look at one of her performances. Now, she's a filly that's a little interesting. She tried 2 turns at Losel, mile and a 16th. I don't want to hold that performance against her. Look who won, Tenma, but she was able to regroup here, and she seemed a little bit more comfortable sitting off of it early and made her run. And the big thing is she's going to have to hold off a late charge here from Artisma, but she's able to do so.
Yeah, I mean, I want to give her some credit for holding on here because it does look at the eighth pole like she's going to get swallowed up by that closer after setting, or I should say, chasing some very fast fractions. And she really digs in the final eighth to hold on to that advantage to the wire. When I go back and watch her starlet, her one performance around the two turns, that was a race that felt like it had a ton of speed on paper, and some jockeys and connections obviously came in with the plan to try to rate their horses, and she was not one of them. And she wound up contesting what was a pretty moderate pace and was able to hold on for second behind Tenma. But I didn't really see her finishing that race the way that I wanted her to. And now it feels like she's landing in a spot where the pace could be way more competitive.
The 10 Flashware. This is a filly that's going to look to regroup around two turns. She tried the 6 furlong distance last time out in hopes of getting that second lifetime win. And she was at the back of the pack early. She tried to make a run, and I guess she improved somewhat, but she really didn't close. And maybe kind of looking at the track that day, it was good. The fractions weren't all that fast.
Yeah, I like her stretching back out in distance, and I guess the last race could be viewed as just a prep. But even when you go back to her goldenrod, she was no match for today's rival Quietside or some of the better 2-year-old fillies out there. So she just has a lot of improving to do.
Kenny McPeak sends out the 6 charge Milady, also sends out the 11 here, who's has those back-to-back wins, was able to graduate 2 starts back at Oaklawn, and then more recently was at the fairgrounds in a very impressive victory where she was not looked at all. She was 9-1 in that field, got a similar trip to what she did down at Oaklawn Park, and another one that's improving with each start.
Yeah, unlike Take Charge Milady, who's been popular with the betters recently, Anonima has been no lower than 9-1 in any of her starts, despite the fact that she's kept improving with each start. I did think that Take Charge Milady was kind of the one you wanted out of her maiden win. And then last time she got an absolutely perfect trip to win that race at Fairground. So I'm not really sure where she stands from a quality standpoint, but at least she's heading in the right direction.
Short Leaf Stable sends out the 12 Quietside. And you already talked about her sort of run in the Martha Washington, probably the tougher of the two trips. She ended up being second there as the heavy favorite, but it's been a little bit since those trips to the winner's circle. She was able to graduate on debut, and she's held her own against tough competition. But another one that I think she's going to need to take some sort of a step forward in the fact that, she's getting defeated by not narrow margins. They have been bigger margins so far.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Ashley, but to me, she kind of feels like the female version of Ferocious because she had this big, impressive debut win at Saratoga, and there were so many expectations heaped upon her. She was the favorite in the spinaway after that, and she ran well to be second, but she's been running well and not really improving at all in her races and just picking up these minor awards. And kind of like that horse Ferocious, I mean, you can make some excuses for her recent races. I didn't love the ride that she got last time in the Martha Washington, but the loss was still pretty decisive. And I just want to see her finishing off her races a little better. And now she's drawn out in post 12, so could be tough to work out a good trip once again.
Yeah, really tough to know what to do with her because as we talk about, having a little bit of maybe a higher expectation for her, she has faced good cheer and immersive. But I think last
Mhm.
time out, I wanted to see more. And we talked about the trip wasn't ideal. And then rounding out the field is the 13 5G. We'll take a look at this daughter of Acoma's performance down at Gulfstream Park. And this is a horse that tried the turf in those last 2 starts towards the end of last year. And then to kick off the new year, got this one on the dirt. Now it's a 1-turn mile at Gulfstream Park, but she took command early and she just kind of makes this a laughing stock sort of thing. She just draws clear here by almost 10 lengths, and it looked pretty easy when it was all said and done.
Yeah, you kind of wonder where this came from because she tried the dirt in her debut race against New York breds. And yeah, she faced With the Angels, who's probably the best New York bred filly out there, but she was no match for that competition. And she looked like she improved on the turf, but apparently she's just been improving overall as a racehorse because she got back on the dirt last time. And that was a pretty impressive victory. I will say the trip that she got really worked out to her advantage because she just kind of inherited the lead when a horse that really was not interested in running gave it up in the early stages. And she was just able to draw from there. Now she's got early speed drawn out in post 13. It just feels like a really tough spot for her shipping in from Florida. And I wonder if the connections are going to reconsider whether this is the right spot for her, given that there are other Kentucky Oaks preps coming up next week.
And I also think even though she was super impressive in the cash run, based on who she beat, the
Mhm.
distance, 1 turn, 4-1 is too short of a price on her for me personally. I don't think I would take that, especially with the 13 hole on Sunday. So top pick time here for the Honeybee. Really excited about this race overall. It seems to be wide open, and we use a lot of the same horses, but different top picks. You'll go to the 6 Take Charge Milady for Kenny McPeak.
Yeah, I put Take Charge Milady on top because she just feels like a horse that's been improving with each start. I'm not worried about the pace of this race potentially getting fast because I know that she can make a rally from mid pack and just like the progression for her. But I am very interested to see what Muhimma does in her 3-year-old debut because she showed a lot of talent last year.
And you figure to get better value on Take Charge Milady, that is for sure. She's 9-2 on the morning line. I'll be a little bit creative here. You talked about Quick Kick, not knowing how good she really is. I think she needs to prove that, but I'm hoping that the pace is hot enough for her on Sunday. Her runs to this point against grade one competition, to me, they've been impressive enough to think that she has a shot here, especially at the price of 12-1. So 6-1, 12-2 for David, 5-1, 6-11 for me. It's race number 9 this Sunday at Oaklawn. Good luck.